Resident Evil is often accredited as one of the franchises that made horror games great and set a standard for horror games today, but just how scary is the original and its remake? Atmosphere. The atmosphere throughout the game is one of tension and isolation. Though characters may come and go in cutscenes, the player is very much alone in the Spencer Mansion and surrounding buildings. The feeling of apprehension with every loading screen as to what is on the other side of the door you just opened is as exciting as it is foreboding, but the atmosphere itself has never been particularly strong and doesn't stand up on its own. The longer the game goes without bumping into an enemy, the weaker it becomes until it's nothing to worry about at all. With the amount of tedious backtracking and puzzle solving taking a front seat to the horror, the feeling of loneliness fades from the start and doesn't really return. No, Harry Masons. Scares. The majority of the scares are often sudden jump scares, but the game does have its unique way of scaring the player. Interestingly though, it's the use of tank controls. Struggling to get away from the slow-moving zombie is often more scary than the zombie itself, though most of the time the zombies are very easy to escape from. Even tougher enemies like the giant snake are fairly easy to avoid, and hunters are more frustrating when they catch you by surprise and kill you instantly than they are scary. At least for me, the sparse scares weren't fulfilling enough to break up the monotony of backtracking and puzzle solving. That's still no Harry Masons. Sound design. The music goes a long way to reinforce the weak atmosphere. Its range from haunting ethereal tones to total silence gives the empty mansion its feeling of foreboding, and eerie silence and guttural groans from the zombies remind you that you aren't alone. That's one Harry Mason. Gore. The gore only appears in cutscenes, though the cutscenes themselves are some of the most memorable scenes in video game history. A zombie chewing on Kenneth's face at the start of the game is instantly recognizable even today. The gore doesn't reach out from the cutscenes much, and even when it does, it's mild at best. However, it's restrained rather than excessive, and never feels like it's unnecessary. That's two Harry Masons. Story. The game follows protagonists Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine as they try to escape the Spencer Mansion after being trapped inside by zombie dogs, while searching for the missing in action Stars Bravo team. The game's story is unveiled through cutscenes, journal entries, and documents throughout the game, and a lot of these are fascinating to read, and far less cheesy than I imagined them being. The twists and turns nowadays are mostly common knowledge, with most players being prepared for them long before they make an appearance. However, if you somehow manage to stay in the dark, these are very entertaining and spark intrigue, making the final score 3 out of 5 Harry Masons. Having never beaten the game in my youth when it was fresh, it's hard to see the appeal of Resident Evil when compared to modern games and even its own sequels. The relentless puzzle solving and running around the mansion drained all of the fear I could have had for the game early on, and instead I found myself bored and waiting for it to end. Whilst it may have scared a generation back in 1996, its formula, which most modern horror games were built on, has been vastly improved on since then. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool. I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I did also freak out a little trying to get away from the first zombie in the game, I did not scream like a banshee or run away from the computer, and I advise you don't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. And always go check out Bumps in the middle of the night. Peace.